Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the distant future, humanity had long spread across the stars, colonizing countless planets in the quest for resources and space. But as with all great expansions, there were those who were left behind. On a forgotten planet at the edge of the galaxy, a group of children, abandoned by the very civilization that once cherished them, struggled to survive in a world that had been cast aside like a broken toy. Lena, a 16-year-old girl with piercing green eyes and an intelligence far beyond her years, was the de facto leader of these orphans. She was small for her age, with a wiry frame that belied her strength and resilience. The planet they lived on, known to them only as exile, was a harsh and unforgiving place. The once thriving colony had been reduced to ruins, its inhabitants either evacuated or lost to time, leaving only the decaying remnants of what was once a bustling outpost of humanity. The children survived by scavenging the remains of the colony, eking out a meager existence from the scraps of technology and supplies left behind. They had formed a tight-knit community, bound together by necessity and the shared trauma of abandonment. But Lena was different from the others. She was driven by a restless curiosity, a need to understand the world around her and her place within it. It was this drive that led her to the old research facility on the outskirts of the colony, a place that the other children avoided out of fear and superstition. The facility was a crumbling labyrinth of darkened corridors and forgotten rooms, its purpose long since lost to the ravages of time. But Lena was undeterred. She had explored every inch of the colony, cataloging its secrets in her mind, and this place was no different. It was here, in the bowels of the facility, that she found the machine. It was an ancient device, covered in dust and grime, with wires and circuits that seemed to pulse with a faint, unnatural light. Lena knew better than to touch it, but something about the machine called to her, a whisper in the back of her mind that she couldn't ignore. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold metal surface, and suddenly, the world shifted. Time seemed to slow around her, the air growing thick and heavy as if reality itself was being stretched thin. Lena gasped, her heart pounding in her chest as she felt the flow of time bend to her will. She could see everything, the dust motes hanging in the air, the flickering lights of the machine, the distant echo of footsteps in the hallway, all moving at a snail's pace, frozen in a moment that only she could perceive. And then, just as suddenly, it was over. Time snapped back into place, and Lena staggered backward, her mind reeling from the experience. She knew, instinctively, that something within her had changed. The machine had awakened something, a power that had lain dormant within her, waiting to be discovered. Lena spent the next few days testing her newfound ability in secret. She discovered that she could manipulate time in small ways, slowing it down or speeding it up for brief moments, but the effort was exhausting, leaving her drained and disoriented. She didn't tell the others, not at first. They had enough to worry about, and she wasn't sure how they would react to her new power. But as the days turned into weeks, Lena began to notice other changes. She could see things she hadn't noticed before, patterns in the way the ruins were laid out, hidden messages in the crumbling walls, and strange symbols that seemed to pulse with energy when she looked at them through the lens of her power. It was as if the entire colony had been designed for a purpose that she was only beginning to understand. Her curiosity led her back to the research facility, where she began to dig through the old records and data logs, piecing together the history of the colony and the experiments that had been conducted there. What she discovered shook her to her core. The colony had been a front for a secret government project, an experiment in human genetics and temporal manipulation. The children, including Lena, were not ordinary orphans. They were the results of these experiments, engineered to possess abilities far beyond those of normal humans. The researchers had been attempting to create a new breed of human, one that could control time itself, but something had gone wrong. The project had been abandoned, the colony left to decay, and the children left to fend for themselves. Lena was horrified by the revelation. She had always known she was different, but this was something else entirely. She wasn't even sure if she was fully human anymore. But there was no time for self-pity or doubt. The knowledge she had uncovered brought with it a new sense of urgency. The other children needed to know the truth, and they needed to understand what they were capable of. Gathering her courage, Lena called a meeting of the orphans, explaining everything she had learned. The children were shocked, frightened, and angry. Some refused to believe her, while others demanded to know why she hadn't told them sooner. But Lena stood firm, her voice steady as she laid out their only option. They had to leave the planet. It wasn't just about survival anymore. If they stayed, they would eventually be discovered by whoever had abandoned them, or worse, by scavengers or pirates who would exploit their abilities. They had to find a way off exile, to start a new life somewhere far from the reach of those who had created them. The children were divided on the plan. Some wanted to stay, to continue living the only life they had ever known, but Lena's determination eventually won them over. She knew there was a way off the planet. She had seen it in the records, hidden deep within the research facility. There was an old ship buried beneath the colony, a vessel designed for long-distance travel that had been mothballed when the project was shut down. If they could repair it, they could escape. The next few weeks were a blur of activity as the orphans worked together to excavate the ship and restore it to working condition. It was a daunting task, made even more difficult by the limited resources and the constant threat of discovery, but they persevered. Lena used her time-manipulating ability to give them an edge, slowing time around the most critical tasks and giving them the chance to work faster and more efficiently. As they worked, Lena began to feel the toll her power was taking on her body. Each use of her ability drained her, leaving her weaker and more exhausted than before. She knew she couldn't keep it up forever, but she couldn't let the others see her weakness. They needed her to be strong, to be their leader, and she couldn't afford to let them down. The ship was finally ready, and the children gathered for one last meeting before they left exile behind. But as they prepared to board, Lena felt a strange sensation, a pull in the back of her mind that she couldn't ignore. It was the machine, the one that had awakened her power, calling to her. She knew what she had to do. Leaving the others behind, Lena returned to the research facility one last time. The machine was waiting for her, its lights flickering in the darkness. She reached out, touching the cold metal surface once more, and felt time bend around her. This time, she understood what the machine wanted. It wasn't just a tool, it was a gateway, a conduit for the power that had been implanted within her and the other children. She could use it to reshape reality, to rewrite the past and give the orphans the life they should have had, free from the pain and suffering they had endured. But there was a cost. To use the machine in this way would mean sacrificing herself, burning out the last of her energy to fuel the transformation. Lena hesitated, torn between her duty to the others and her own desire to survive. In the end, it wasn't a choice at all. Lena knew she couldn't live with herself if she condemned the others to a life of uncertainty and danger. She closed her eyes, focusing on the machine, and let the power flow through her one last time. Time unraveled, the world around her dissolving into a sea of possibilities. Lena felt herself fading, her consciousness slipping away as she reached out to reshape reality. She saw the other children, safe and happy in a new life, their memories of exile erased, their abilities dormant but still there, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And then, there was nothing. The orphans never knew what Lena had done for them. They boarded the ship, unaware that their leader had stayed behind, her body now just another part of the ruins they had left behind. The ship lifted off, breaking free from the planet's gravity, and disappeared into the stars. In the years that followed, the children grew up, their memories of exile fading like a distant dream. They became doctors, engineers, artists, and leaders, each one finding their own place in the galaxy. But every now and then, one of them would experience a moment of déjà vu, a flicker of something forgotten, and they would wonder, just for a moment, what had brought them to where they were. They would never know the answer, but somewhere, deep in the recesses of their minds, a small part of them would remember the girl with green eyes and the power to change the world. As the ship hurtled through space, its engines humming steadily, the orphans adjusted to their new reality. Lena's absence was felt, though they didn't fully grasp the void she had left behind. To them, she had been their leader, the one who had guided them through the chaos of exile, but now they found themselves relying on one another, drawn closer by the bond of survival. The vessel, a relic of the past, was a marvel of engineering. It had been designed for long journeys, equipped with advanced life support systems, and enough resources to sustain them for months, possibly years, if needed. The ship's interior, though old, was still functional, its corridors and rooms eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the desolation they had left behind on exile. Among the group, Tim, a lanky boy with a talent for mechanics, took it upon himself to ensure the ship remained operational. He was often found tinkering with the control panels, his hands deftly working to coax the aging systems back to life. While the others explored the ship's compartments, searching for clues about their destination, Tim remained focused on keeping them alive in the present. Nina, a fierce and determined girl with a natural leadership quality, began to fill the void left by Lena. She had always been close to Lena, and now, more than ever, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She made it her mission to keep the group unified, reminding them of the importance of their journey and the need to stay strong, no matter what challenges lay ahead. But despite their efforts to move forward, Lena's absence lingered like a shadow over the group. The younger children, particularly Mia, a shy girl with big, expressive eyes, often asked about Lena, wondering when she would return. Each time, Nina would gently deflect the question, her heart heavy with the truth she could not bear to tell. Days turned into weeks as the ship sailed through the endless void of space. The stars outside the viewing ports were distant and cold, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and their small place within it. The children adapted to their new life aboard the ship, falling into routines that provided them with a sense of stability. Meals were shared in the communal galley, and each night, they would gather in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars, lost in thoughts of what might await them at the end of their journey. It was during one of these quiet nights that a change occurred. Tim, who had been working late in the control room, noticed a faint signal on the ship's radar. It was weak, almost imperceptible, but it was there, an indication that they were not alone in the vastness of space. His heart raced as he double-checked the readings, trying to make sense of the data scrolling across the screen. Could it be a rescue party? Or perhaps something more sinister? He rushed to inform Nina, who quickly gathered the group in the control room. The children crowded around the monitor, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the screens, each one holding their breath as they waited for Tim to explain. "It's a signal," Tim said, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. "It's coming from a ship, but it's not like any ship I've seen before. The signature is different. I think it's old, really old." The revelation sent a ripple of unease through the group. They had been prepared for many things: hunger, exhaustion, the loneliness of space, but encountering another ship was something they hadn't anticipated. Questions buzzed in the air: was the other ship friend or foe? Should they respond to the signal or avoid it entirely? Nina, sensing the rising tension, took charge. "We need more information before we make any decisions. Tim, can you get us closer without being detected?" Tim nodded, already at work on the controls. The ship's thrusters hummed as they adjusted course, drawing them closer to the source of the signal. The closer they got, the more details became clear. The other ship was massive, its structure ancient and imposing, with hull markings that suggested it had been drifting for centuries. As they neared, the ship's features became clearer, and with it, a sense of foreboding settled over the orphans. The ship was a relic, a ghost from the past, and yet, it was still active, still broadcasting a signal that had drawn them in. "Should we dock?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nina hesitated, her mind racing. The other ship might hold answers, or it might be a trap. But they couldn't ignore the possibility that it could also be their salvation, a way to find out more about their origins and their purpose. "We don't have a choice," Nina finally said, her voice steady. "We need to know what's out there. Tim, prepare the docking sequence." With a few keystrokes, Tim initiated the docking procedure, and the two ships slowly began to align. The children felt the subtle shift as the ships connected, their own vessel shuddering slightly as it latched onto the larger ship. The docking was complete, and now, all that remained was to explore the unknown. Nina led the way, flanked by Tim and a few of the older children, while the younger ones stayed behind to monitor the situation from the control room. The airlock doors hissed as they opened, revealing a dark, cavernous corridor that stretched out before them. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of age and disuse, and the only sound was the distant hum of machinery, still functioning after all this time. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The interior of the ship was vast, its design unfamiliar and alien. It was clear that this vessel had been constructed by a long-lost civilization, its technology far beyond anything the children had encountered on exile. The walls were lined with strange symbols and hieroglyphs, their meaning lost to time, but they glowed faintly as if responding to the children's presence. As they ventured deeper into the ship, they discovered that it wasn't entirely abandoned. In one of the large chambers, they found rows upon rows of stasis pods, each one containing a figure suspended in a dreamless sleep. The figures were humanoid, but their features were elongated and otherworldly, their skin a pale, luminescent blue. Mia gasped as she peered into one of the pods, her breath fogging up the glass. "What are they?" Tim shook his head, his expression unreadable. "I don't know, but they've been here for a long time. These pods are keeping them alive, or at least in some kind of stasis." Nina approached one of the pods, her hand hovering over the controls. "We need to find out what happened here. Maybe they were like us, experiments, abandoned by whoever created them." She hesitated, then pressed a button on the control panel. The pod hissed as it began to release its occupant, the figure inside slowly stirring as the stasis field dissipated. The children watched in awe and fear as the being opened its eyes, blinking slowly as if awakening from a long sleep. The being's gaze settled on Nina, its eyes filled with an ancient wisdom and a deep sadness. It spoke in a language they didn't understand, its voice resonating with a melodic cadence that echoed through the chamber. But as the words faded, something remarkable happened. Nina's mind began to translate, the meaning of the words becoming clear as if the being was communicating directly with her thoughts. "We were the first," the being said, its voice tinged with regret. "Created to explore the stars, to unlock the secrets of the universe. But we were abandoned, left to drift in the void, our purpose forgotten." Nina felt a pang of recognition, understanding the being's plight on a level that transcended words. "We were abandoned too," she said softly. "Left to die on a planet that no one remembers." The being's expression softened, its eyes reflecting a glimmer of hope. "Perhaps we are not so different after all. If you have found your way here, then there is still hope. Together, we can find the answers we seek, and perhaps, a new purpose." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of possibility. The children had come seeking answers, and now they had found them, or at least, the beginning of something that could lead them to the truth. The being's presence was a reminder that they were not alone, that others had been cast aside by the forces that created them, but they didn't have to remain lost forever. Nina nodded, her resolve strengthening. "We'll help each other. We'll find a way to survive, to discover who we really are and what we're meant to be." With that, a new chapter in their journey began. The children and their new ally returned to their ship, leaving the stasis chamber behind, but the connection they had made with the past would guide them as they forged their future. As the ship resumed its journey, the orphans knew that their story was far from over.